Well, he was an unknown commodity, but we found out that he was one of the best goaltenders around at that point. I mean, he came to play. Big, big hands, just like Johnny Bauer. You shake hands with him and your hands get lost in his.
Right.
And he proved himself, I mean, year after year, to be one of the best hockey players back in the 70s.
Oh, absolutely. Well, why don't we take a shot at the a picture? Well, let's go to the goal. Let's go to the goal. We have some footage here of the actual goal. I think Foster Hewitt is calling the play. Let's watch.
Has it on that way. Here's the shot. Henderson made a wild stab for it and fell. Here's another shot. Right by the goal. Henderson right in front. And the lead in the game is going on.
Decades after it happened, no goal in history was talked about with such passion. The goal of the century secured Paul Henderson's place in hockey lore.
You even had Prime Minister Diefenbaker on his feet there, Paul. and all kinds of people come up to you and say, I know where I was when that goal was scored, and they still remember it.
Oh, exactly.
It was one of those moments for Canadians. Now, let's talk about the current debate. The debate is, and I've heard on all of the talk shows, who scored the greatest goal, Henderson or Crosby? Now, I know you're a modest guy. Let me give you my perspective on it. Crosby's goal was awesome, just absolutely awesome, and it was the gold-winning goal. It was also, that gold represented a record number of gold that any home country had ever won in the Olympics. It was just a galvanizing moment forever to be remembered. However, it seemed to me that your goal had a three-dimensional aspect to it in terms of the Cold War, in terms of us versus them, good guys versus bad guys, nation of light against the dark side. Also, there was this shroud of mystery surrounding the Russian players. I mean, now the NHL is full of Russian players, and we're quite used to them. It had this kind of historic implication in terms of we're going to win, the communists are going to lose. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think, first of all, I'd like to say that they were both great goals. I mean, they were great for our country. I would also like to say Crosby scored right off the bat. I mean, it took me 2 shots, so he's obviously a lot better
more
than
skills,
I am.
Right?
And I think, Crosby, arguably maybe the best hockey player in all of hockey today. I would not have come anywhere near that in my situation. So I just, who cares whether one's bigger than the other? That is incidental. They were monumental moments for us as Canadians, as a country, and as a hockey player. And so let's celebrate it. And anytime you can put Paul Henderson's name beside Sidney Crosby's, I'm the winner, not him.
Have you met Sidney?
I've never met him. That's one of the irritations of my life, but I will meet him at some point, but I've never had an opportunity to meet him.
I think that would be a terrific moment. When you shake hands, there might be an electric spark.
Yeah, well, there you go.
The interesting thing to me as I was reading your book, Shooting for Glory, is that, and I really appreciate the fact you talk about your upbringing, you talk about your distant relationship with your father. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, you give him full credit for really pushing you forward in hockey and really being the catalyst to you becoming a hockey player. All these years later, when you look back to the Paul Henderson that was, even before 1972, how significant was this relationship or lack of relationship with your dad?
Well, it was one of those probably typical. My father was a very, very strong individual, probably a male chauvinist. You never take a backward step. And he was one of those guys that he really pushed me, but it was always if I scored 3 goals, I should have had 5 goals. Right. One of those relationships. But one of the, and I was closer to my mother, maybe because my mother and I would be able to, we could communicate with one another. My dad just really didn't communicate that well. But one significant time that we had, we won the Memorial Cup here in Hamilton in 1962. And I was going with my girlfriend, who is now my wife of 47 years, and we were fairly poor. And I knew that I probably, I decided that we were going to give up hockey and I was going to go to university, concentrating on getting an education because I hated being poor. I just couldn't stand that. And I told Detroit that I was quitting. I came home and told my dad that Ellen and I have talked about it. I'm going to give up hockey because I want to get an education. And back then it was very difficult to do the two of them. And my dad sat me down. He says, Paul, I'm not sure that you're making a bad decision, but he said, I think it'll drive you crazy till the day you die. Every time you see the team skating out there on Saturday night, you're going to say to yourself, I wonder if I could have made it. And I sat there, and I went and I talked to Eleanor about it, and Eleanor agreed. And we said, you know, it probably will drive you crazy. So we decided I would finish my last year junior here, and then I would give myself 2 years to make the NHL. If I couldn't make it in 2 years, then I was going to quit hockey and then obviously go to school. And so that's what really got me serious. My last year junior here, I scored 49 goals, set a record, and I think that was the thing that pushed me over the edge, that I really, this isn't what I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. And I think I probably, that was a defining moment, and obviously one of the best decisions I ever made. And so it worked out very, very well. But it was one of those situations where, you know, and I don't think my dad knew how to communicate. Back then there weren't books, or you weren't educated that well in terms of all the things you can do today. And so anyway, it was one of those situations.
Now, Eleanor, you know, married 47 years. She was your girlfriend at that time. She showed an awful lot of maturity and foresight to agree with your dad, because she would have been looking for some security if she's going to marry this guy, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, I can tell you, I really believe God created her just for me. If I had a choice of all the women in the world, I could never have made a better choice. I mean, she's probably taught me more by accident than anybody else has on purpose. And I would give her more credit than any other person to becoming the person I am today, and the hockey player. And she had a spiritual side of her life growing up, which I didn't have. I mean,